What's up YouTube, Zero here, and today I have an absolutely awesome Decidueye EX and Shuckle EX deck in Pokemon TCG Pocket. In this video, I'll go over the deck build that you can see on the left hand side of the screen. I'll talk about each of these cards individually, and I'll talk about why this deck works so well as a whole and why you should definitely be checking it out. Before I get into it, I do want to say if you do enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more Pokemon TCG content. I do a bunch of other video games, so feel free to check those out as well. Thank you so much in advance for doing so. Without further ado, let's talk about this deck. This deck is insanely fun. Shuckle is a really fun card to get out into that active spot quickly and utilize triple slap. Decidueye, of course, one of my favorite Pokemon. If y'all have watched my videos before, you already know I already have a couple of Decidueye EX decks, so take a look for those if you are a Decidueye EX fan just like myself. These two cards combine really well with each other because Shuckle can get out into that active spot and start hitting fairly hard pretty quickly. Of course, Shuckle has triple slap, so it deals 20 times damage. You get to flip 3 coins and the attack does 20 damage for each heads. So of course you have a little bit of odds whether you're going to hit for 0, 20, 40, or 60. But for just one grass energy, you can hit for some pretty good damage, especially when you're facing Pokemon that take a little while to get set up. You can see in this clip right now, I'm facing a Darkrai EX and Arceus EX. Both of those Pokemon do take a little while to get set up. So while they're getting set up, I'm able to hit both of these Pokemon with triple slap for either 20, 40, or 60 damage. So I'm slowly whittling away their health while I'm getting set up and they're getting set up. So I get to attack, they're just getting set up. Of course, Shuckle EX also has an ability, Solid Shell, which takes minus 20 damage from attacks. So when a Pokemon does attack Shuckle, it does minus 20 damage. So if you're facing a basic Pokemon that only deals 20 damage, you're not going to be taking any damage from that Pokemon. So you get to utilize Shuckle to attack your opponent, and your opponent essentially doesn't get to attack you for a little while. So that's pretty nice as well. All the while you're getting set up, you're getting your Decidueye ready to come in and finish off all of the weakened opponents. Shuckle EX is going to be found in the Wisdom of Sea and Sky Lugia packs. For those of you who are wondering, of course, there are 3 coin flips, so that's 20 times 3 is going to be 60 damage. 60 damage, you have the potential of doing that approximately 1/8 of the time, and 1/8 of the time is going to be approximately 12.5%. So that's pretty good odds, in my opinion, for just one leaf energy, one grass energy. You get to deal 60 damage 12.5% of the time. So that's really nice to be able to do that. 3/8 of the time, you get to deal 40 damage. That's going to be 37.5% of the time you get to deal 40 damage. So those are the odds, just so those of you who are interested are aware, meaning 50% of the time you get to deal 40 or 60 damage. So for just one grass energy, you're dealing a decent amount of damage, especially since you're taking minus 20 damage for Shuckle. You're not taking as much damage. The Pokemon that deal 20 or 30 damage for just one energy aren't hitting you really hard, and the Pokemon that do hit really hard, the basic Pokemon that hit really hard, are taking a while to get set up. So Shuckle is really awesome in that active slot to start off the battle while you're getting ready, while you're getting the cards from your hand. so you can get your Decidueye ready to deal the extra damage. Decidueye is going to be the damage dealer. Shuckle is going to be the Pokemon that starts off the match to just deal a little bit of damage, get hits on the Pokemon you can, so Decidueye can come in and finish them off. So Shuckle can be found in the Wisdom of Sea and Sky Lugia packs. Now let's talk about Decidueye EX, an absolutely phenomenal card. I'm actually surprised I haven't seen it as much recently because it is a phenomenal card. I love utilizing it, and it takes not that long to get set up. Of course, it is a stage 2, so it does take a little while, but for only 2 energy, you can attack with either Pierce the Pain or Razor Leaf. So you have Rare Candy, you have your Rowlet on the field, you can evolve into Decidueye EX, and for just 2 energy, you can start hitting pretty hard really quickly. So let's talk about Decidueye EX, which does have 2 moves. The first is Razor Leaf that I'm going to talk about. Straightforward. For 2 grass energy, you have Razor Leaf for 80 damage. The next move is going to be a little bit more fun, a little bit more complicated. So the next one is Pierce the Pain for 2 colorless energy. So Pierce the Pain for 2 colorless energy, the attack does 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon that has damage on it. So that's very important. Your opponent's Pokemon that you want to attack with, Pierce the Pain, has to have damage on it. So you can't utilize Pierce the Pain unless your opponent's Pokemon has damage on it. If you utilize Pierce the Pain and none of your opponent's Pokemon have damage on it, this move will do nothing. So just be aware of that when you are attacking. If you do choose Pierce the Pain, make sure the opponent you want to attack, the Pokemon you want to attack, has damage on it. But what's really nice is it does not matter where that Pokemon is on the playing field. If the Pokemon that has damage on it is on the bench, as long as it has damage on it, you can still attack it with Pierce the Pain. So you don't need a Cyrus in this deck. Your opponent can retreat as many weakened Pokemon as they want out of the active slot. As long as you have Decidueye powered up in that active slot, you can attack damaged Pokemon. So that's really awesome. A really epic card, and it is a phenomenal card in this game. Great Pokemon to have. I absolutely love utilizing it. I've been running this deck in ranked, and right now I'm on a 5 winning streak with it. It is a phenomenal deck. These 2 cards are great in unison with each other because Shuckle EX can get out into that active slot, start dealing damage, start dealing that chip damage. Like I said, 50% of the time you're hitting for 40 or 60 damage. Of course, you can hit for 20 damage, which is still some chip damage. There is a possibility, a 12.5% possibility you hit for 0 damage. But however, the rest of the time, you're going to be hitting for at least 20 damage. So you're getting that chip damage on your Pokemon. Shuckle takes minus 20 damage from attacks. So you're getting your Decidueye set up. Then after you've dealt all your chip damage and you want to start dealing a lot more damage, you put your Decidueye in that active slot and you start hitting for 100 damage because Shuckle is getting that chip damage on your opponent's Pokemon. And Decidueye is going to be found in the Celestial Guardians Lunala packs. Next, have to evolve into Decidueye. There are multiple Rowlets in the game, so just be aware I'm utilizing the Rowlet that has Skill Dive. So Skill Dive, the attack does 10 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So it doesn't have to be the active Pokemon. You can choose whatever Pokemon on the playing field that you want to attack. This is really nice because you can set up your Decidueye. Rowlet can attack a Pokemon on the bench that you would prefer to attack with your Decidueye. So hit a Pokemon, whichever one on the playing field you feel like would be best to strategize hitting, utilize Rowlet, get some damage on it, and then once your Decidueye is ready, you have your Rare Candy, you have your Decidueye, you can hit that opponent on the bench or the active slot, whichever Pokemon you'd rather attack, and hit it for Pierce the Pain instead of having to utilize Razor Leaf in that active slot for only 80. You can hit whatever Pokemon you want for 100, of course, as long as they don't heal. but this Rowlet is going to be found in the Celestial Guardians Lunala packs as well. Something I want to point out really quickly prior to getting into the other cards in this deck, for those of you who are aware, I do not have a plan for Oricorio in the deck I'm utilizing right now. I have been able to defeat some Oricorio decks, albeit really slowly and really painfully, thanks to a combination of Sabrina's and the cards that I have, and Rowlet, because Rowlet can hit any Pokemon. Utilize Rowlet to attack Pokemon that aren't Oricorio, come in with Decidueye, and then finish off his weakened Pokemon or my opponent's weakened Pokemon. Also utilizing Sabrina to force Oricorio out of the active slot so Shuckle can attack him. But I don't have a true counter to Oricorio in this deck. If you want a counter to Oricorio in this deck, go with non-EX Decidueye. Non-EX Decidueye can hit for 70 damage, so it'll one-shot Oricorio pending any giant cape, and you can substitute that in for one of the supporter cards. Either maybe take out an Erica, just leaving you with one Erica, take out How. You don't always need How. How just increases Decidueye EX's damage by 30, so you don't necessarily need How. I haven't used it all the time. Or you could get rid of Mars. I don't want to get rid of either of my Sabrinas, but that's just an option. If you do want to prepare for Oricorio, you can have non-EX Decidueye in this deck. Now let's talk about the rest of the deck. So, some of the basic cards that are in every deck. Pokeball, put a random basic Pokemon from your deck into your hand, and Professor's Research, you draw 2 cards. Some pretty basic Pokemon, or some pretty basic Pokemon cards, but some necessities that are required for this deck. Next, I mentioned it earlier, but Rare Candy. Rare Candy is a necessity to getting Decidueye on the playing field as quickly as possible. For those of you who don't know what Rare Candy does, in this context, if Rowlet has been on the playing field for at least one turn, and you have Decidueye EX and a Rare Candy in your hand, you can evolve right into Decidueye, skipping the stage 1, so you don't have to worry about Dartrix. You can just evolve into Decidueye, and I don't have a Dartrix in this deck. I just utilize Rare Candy and Decidueye EX. Rare Candy can be found in the Celestial Guardians packs. Rare Candy is a phenomenal card for any stage 2 Pokemon, so I recommend definitely grinding for it if you don't have it, but I utilize 2 Rare Candies in this deck to get Decidueye EX onto the playing field as quickly as possible. Next, Leaf Cape. Leaf Cape is going to increase the survivability of both Decidueye EX and Shuckle EX. I already mentioned earlier that Shuckle EX is taking minus 20 damage from attacks, which is going to make it hard to kill, while you can set up your deck, set up your Decidueye, and do chip damage on your opponent's Pokemon. Leaf Cape is going to make it even harder to kill, plus 30 HP for any grass type Pokemon. So that means Shuckle now goes up to 150 HP, and if your opponent is only dealing 20 damage, it's not going to damage you. So you're going to be chipping away while Leaf Cape is active. Your opponent is going to be getting frustrated, trying to attack you, and they can't, so they're going to have to evolve into a Pokemon that can at least deal some damage. But what's nice is that you're going to increase the survivability of your Pokemon in this deck. So Leaf Cape is going to be found in the Celestial Guardian Solgaleo packs. Absolutely phenomenal attachment to have. And then if you equip it on Decidueye, which I do like doing, one on Decidueye, one on Shuckle, the Leaf Cape increases Decidueye EX's HP from 170 to 200. So it's going to increase the survivability of Decidueye EX as well. Next, Erica, another card that's going to increase the survivability of both of these Pokemon. I already mentioned that Shuckle is going to be frustrating your opponent by taking 20 less damage. Now, Pokemon that can deal a decent amount of damage, I'll utilize the deck in front of me, Zeraora and Oricorio, that can both deal 50 damage. So they're going to be dealing minus 20 damage. So now that's down to just 30 damage. So they hit me for 30 damage. They hit me for a second 30 damage. If I have an Erica, I can heal up 50 of that damage. So it's almost like in 2 turns, they were only able to hit me for 10 damage. Erica, for those of you who don't know, heals up 50 damage from one of your grass type Pokemon. So Erica is phenomenal to increase the survivability of both Shuckle and Decidueye EX. Both of them can heal up for 50 since they're both grass type Pokemon. And because of Leaf Cape, they're going to be staying on the playing field even longer. It's going to be harder for your opponent to take out your Pokemon thanks to the combination of Leaf Cape and Erica. So while you're hitting your opponent, you can deal 100 with Decidueye with Pierce the Pain to any Pokemon that's damaged. You're keeping your Pokemon alive a lot longer. Decidueye is dealing that chip damage. This card is phenomenal for this deck. Really helps keep all of these Pokemon alive a lot longer. And Erica is going to be found in the Genetic Apex Charizard packs. Next, Sabrina. Sabrina was instrumental in me defeating this Oricorio deck. Of course, knocking Oricorio out of that active slot when I wanted to, so I could deal damage to my opponent's Pokemon, was critical for me to get my rare candy, evolve into my Decidueye, and start attacking with Pierce the Pain. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, Shuckle EX and Decidueye EX cannot hit Oricorio. So it's important, if you're facing an Oricorio deck, either to get a non-EX Decidueye or to have Sabrina locked and loaded so you can force that Oricorio out of the active spot. Obviously important because you need to attack a Pokemon that's not Oricorio. So utilizing Sabrina is going to draw out a non-Oricorio Pokemon. As long as your opponent doesn't have an Oricorio on the bench, you can attack them, deal damage, and be ready with Pierce the Pain. So when your opponent puts that Oricorio back into that active slot, you can start damaging the Pokemon on the bench. Now, what's also important for Sabrina is it can really help throw off your opponent's strategy. For those of you who don't know, Sabrina, you switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. Your opponent does get to choose the new active Pokemon, but you can really throw off your opponent's strategy. You can force a Pokemon into the active slot that your opponent doesn't want there. Maybe it's a Pokemon that doesn't have a lot of HP and can be one-shot by Decidueye. Maybe it's a Pokemon that has a high retreat cost that they just don't want in that active slot because they won't know how to retreat that Pokemon. There are a lot of uses of Sabrina. Perhaps it's a Pokemon that has all energy built up and you just don't want them in the active slot. A lot of uses for Sabrina, but a phenomenal card, one of my favorite cards, and one of my staples in a lot of my decks. And Sabrina can be found in the Genetic Apex Charizard packs. A couple more cards, and I have one of each of these. I have one Hau and one Mars. Hau, I mentioned it earlier. During this turn, attacks used by Decidueye EX deal 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So do note it's only to the active Pokemon, so you have to attack the active Pokemon if you want to utilize Hau and deal 30 extra damage. But 30 extra damage is nice and can really help in certain situations. It can, just dealing 30 extra damage can really help defeat a Pokemon, especially if your opponent has healing agents such as Pokemon Center Lady or Potion. It can really help you get past those. So I do like at least one Hau in this deck, and Hau can be found in the Eevee Grove packs. Last but not least, Mars. I have one Mars. It can be utilized at different points of the game, but it can really help if your opponent has a lot of cards built up in his or her hand. So Mars, your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck and draws a card for each of their remaining points needed to win. So you can see my opponent right now has a lot of cards in their hand. If I had a Mars, if I had a Mars, I can utilize the Mars, get rid of all of those cards, and they'll go down to 3 cards because they have 3 points left needed to win. If it was towards the end of the game and they already had 2 points and they have a lot of cards in their hand, I can utilize Mars and put 1 card in their hand. This can really get rid of a lot of good cards in your opponent's hand. Of course, it can get rid of a Sabrina that I just mentioned. If they hadn't put any of their Pokemon tools onto their Pokemon, it can get rid of Pokemon tools. Perhaps you can get rid of a healing agent like an Erica, so after you've damaged your opponent's Pokemon, they can't heal anymore. There are a lot of cards that you can get rid of and really cripple your opponent by utilizing Mars. So I love Mars. It's a phenomenal card at certain points in the game. It does require a little bit more strategy to utilize, but it is a great card and can really cripple your opponents. And Mars can be found in the Space-Time Smackdown Palkia packs. This is an absolutely phenomenal deck. It's a really fun deck to utilize. Shuckle getting in that active spot really quickly, dealing that chip damage, can deal 40 or 60 damage 50% of the time, which is really nice. And also taking that minus 20 damage is nice as well because it increases the survivability and also slows down your opponent so you can get your Decidueye set up. Your Decidueye gets set up, it can start dealing a fair amount of damage, 100 damage to any Pokemon that has damage on it. But if your opponent's Pokemon don't have damage on it, you can deal 80 to that active Pokemon. Thanks to Shuckle, a lot of Pokemon are going to have damage on it. It's going to be hitting for 20, 40, 60. Your opponent is going to have to retreat their Pokemon, and Decidueye is going to come in and clean up all of the Pokemon that were retreated. I love this combination. As I mentioned earlier, I am running this in ranked right now, and I'm on a 5-win streak. So this is a phenomenal deck. I recommend checking it out and let me know what you think. What are some substitutions that you would make to make this deck even better? Let me know in the comments section. Let me know what you think about Decidueye. Is it one of your favorite Pokemon like me? Or do you not care for it? Is there a Pokemon you'd like to see a deck built around? Let me know in the comments section and I'll get it done. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, peace.